Good morning, everybody. I hope you like our new backdrops. They were done as a little bit of fun, and I'm kind of want to get to myself where I'm actually sort of not a virus. I've wiped out the virus. If we could all sort of wipe the virus out just like that, wouldn't it be amazing? I'm sure all of you are going stir crazy and worrying about the state of the nation. We're all in this together, and hopefully we will come out the other side. We've got a lovely bunch of people in today, so over to all of you. I hope you're all okay and coping. We're going to be covering today, as always, update, although as you all know the legislation hasn't really changed in the last few weeks, but there's a few bits and pieces we're going to update you on, and some other news, and then a bit about restrictions on the sector and what you can be doing to prepare. And as Jill said, we've got a great guest speaker with Dan. I've known Dan for, oh my gosh, 20 odd years now. So his journey through Lee Valley has been quite remarkable. So some great conversation with Dan. And then a bit of an update from us. There's a few things that we would like to talk to you about things that we've done for you all. And then we're going over to questions. And I'm going to hand you over to Ian.
Hi, if we know the next slide, thank you. Hi everybody, I bet back in December you thought you'd heard the last from me. As Jill said, none of us. We probably suspected but hoped very much we wouldn't be where we are now. And I think it's incumbent on all of us now to try and get our way out of this. And hopefully, I've just had my vaccine, looking at the slide behind me, but all the older people and vulnerable people will get theirs soon, and we can begin working towards a more positive future. I think the updates, most of you will be fully aware of what's happening, but in brief, everybody knows that all nations are in lockdown until at least February, and that's probably mid to end of February. Cases, as everybody will know from the news, are continuing to rise exponentially, and whereas they are beginning to come down, the lag in terms of hospital and pressure on the NHS is still to be fully seen. We've got new, more transmittable variants, which might have more impact on us moving forward. The NHS continues to be under extreme pressure. Admissions still continue to go up. Hopefully that will begin reducing fairly soon. And a quarter of those people in hospital with COVID are under 55, which does seem to be a change. Before we were saying all along it was the older people that were more likely to be in there, but now it's becoming more real, certainly for people like me, and the next cohort of people, that it's not just the older and vulnerable people. So I think we do have to be fully aware of that and build that into our thinking as we plan to reopen. If we can move on. Next slide when it comes up. Has the next slide moved over for everybody else? It hasn't for me. There we are. Just looking at the headlines, still obviously death rates continuing to go up in our country and worldwide. The average death rate of over 1,000 now in the UK. The R rate still very high. Ministers are indicating we won't be back to any kind of normality. Won't be completely back by spring, and indications that probably we won't get back to what we knew as normal at the earliest until September. So we can see potential restrictions being in place for quite a long time to come. And the reasons for that, we can only surmise at whether we all took our foot off the pedal towards November and December, and whether some of the relaxations caused the general increase in cases across the country to occur. Steps to relax restrictions will take place gradually, and it's likely from what's been indicated that we'll return to some kind of tiered system. And that restrictions will be based, those decisions will be based on the pressures on the NHS and the rollout of the vaccine programme. So if we can move to the next slide, please. I think most of you will be aware of this. Again, continuing what's happening, Scotland only very recently strengthened some of their restrictions across the board, certainly encouraging more home working. Wales have introduced new legislation regarding workplaces and premises that remain open to public, focusing on the risk assessment, ventilation, hygiene and social distancing. That sounds familiar and shouldn't be any surprise to us. We've had ventilation being focused on our industry for a long time. It's good that they're now rolling that across others. The UK, as you all know, probably have heard, suspended travel corridors and enforcing greater isolation controls. And supermarkets tightening up on controls. And that's the point I was making a minute ago, that I think we did see towards the end a loosening of controls, which perhaps helped cause that spike. I think when we come back into operation, we need to consider that, and they may even be putting greater controls in place to try and reinforce the need for us to maintain all our COVID secure measures when we come back. Because while a cohort of people will have been vaccinated, it won't be the end of it, and they too will still be capable of transmitting the virus as far as we know. There's no research that indicates that they still can't get it, not be affected as badly, but still transmit it on. So we do need to keep an open mind as to what might come in the future. Next slide, please. More positive news, the vaccine is being rolled out and rolled out at pace, which is great. Ministers advised that we will on track to meet the initial target of the 15th for all priority groups. Case numbers are falling, whereas we haven't seen the peak of people in hospital. That peak of infection seems to have passed, and hopefully in the next week or so we will see the pressure on the NHS begin to reduce, and we can see the route out of this. For some of you, the Supreme Court ruling last Friday against the wording in some insurers' business interruption cover hopefully will help some of you with payouts due to COVID-19 under your business interruption cover. So go back and dig out your insurance policy, see what it says, and see whether you fall under that ruling. Hopefully some of you will gain benefit from that and help you see yourself through this dreadful current situation. England-wide, a survey just after Christmas showed that 5,000 people, over 80% of them aged over 18, had made a decision to change their lifestyle in 2021 due to COVID-19. And if you click on the link there, you'll get more information. So for us as an industry, whereas some people might have decided they don't want to come back into our gyms, there's clearly a vast number of people that are wanting to make a change to the way they live, the change of their exercise habits. And hopefully going forward, that is something we can really buy into. Hopefully we've seen the last of Laura Kuenssberg banging on about Brexit, and we can move on with it. And the days are getting longer, spring is returning, and hopefully we can see light at the end of the tunnel. So next slide, please. In other news, Sport England launched its new 10-year strategy, or launches its new 10-year strategy on the 26th, and is hosting a series of webinars. So you can click on the link and you can join those to see what they are saying, and hopefully that might help in some of the pathways that we can see to recovery. CIMSPA is partnering with Workplace Mental Health, Fitness and Active Leisure to test the state of the mental health at all levels of the workforce. 2 surveys are open now, one for you as employers and one for your workforce, and will close in mid-February. Again, click on the link to be able to access those surveys, and it's something I think that's vitally important. I think we've all seen people go through ups and downs. It is affecting all of us, and it would be good to help CIMSPA see what can be done through getting these surveys complete. And it's also worth looking at many of the governing bodies. They continue to update their guidance and really have maybe stepped up to the plate in issuing out more guidance to help their particular sports. So just be aware of them and keep reviewing the relevant websites to see what they're coming out with. Okay, next slide, please. In other news, there's trying to re-promote the What 3 Words app, which helps emergency services track people down. Again, you can click on the link for further information. It's general information. It may help you, your families, or your workforce if they know about the What 3 Words app and how that works. Currently, we've not heard of any new health and safety legislation. I think there's enough going on with other things for probably another year before government really begin to look at any changes that they might be contemplating. But as we hear about those, we will clearly talk about those and let you know on that front if any changes are imminent. Current restrictions affecting the industry still apply. We know about the overall lockdown. In England, personal training can take place on a one-to-one basis in outdoor public spaces only. Organised outdoor sport for disabled people can continue. And I think this probably applies to all nations now. The police forces in most nations now are taking a more stringent view. And I know on the local London news last night, there were stories about 4 individual men training in a park that were each given spot fines of £200, and we hear of gyms that are flouting the rules being caught. So let's hope none of you or none of your colleagues caught within that realm. They do seem to be taking a slightly more direct approach now rather than the drag people along. Scotland, personal training can take place again on a one-to-one basis. It's permitted in your garden, provided that the person doing that one-to-one training goes through the house without touching anything. Hope you don't need the loo while you're there. Outdoor gyms can remain open. Outdoor non-contact sports can take place with a maximum of 2 people from 2 different households. So slightly different rules between some of the nations. Non-contact outdoor sport is permitted for under 12s in Scotland. Wales, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, personal training is not permitted. Outdoor sports cannot take place. And all indoor facilities, as we know, must remain closed. We've highlighted this on most of our clinics. Regular checks for you that have got buildings should be continued. Legionella, not so much of a problem from your cold water sources, from your water tanks heating up at this time of year, probably more concern about freezing up, but you will get thermal gain if you're not pushing water through your system, and it's probably your hot water. So you do need to keep those temperature checks and flushing in place. Your pool water tests clearly need to be kept up to date, including your bacteriological tests, so that when we are ready to come back, your pools are fit and healthy and ready to go. Fire alarm emergency lights need to be continued. Building security checks should be maintained. Statutory inspections, you should be keeping on top of those. Construction industry companies should be coming out and are able to do that. Staff communications remain key. If you're unsure, use the link when you get the slide sent out of you to check the revalidation of qualifications. Some qualifications have been extended now if they expired after October until the 31st of March, but it's important you understand it. And when you're ready to come back, it's vital that you have got first aid trained people on site able to meet your own policies and procedures. So you might need to look at trying to book now before everybody else suddenly realises it, to get your face-to-face training. It can be organised under COVID secure measures, so long as the appropriate steps are taken to get things like first aid training back up to date for when you reopen, if you've had people expire in that period of time. Staff comms are clearly key. You need to keep that up, and housekeeping, sorting out archiving. I'm sure most sites have got a myriad of things they can be doing if they look, which will enable you to prepare on what you're really there for as soon as we do reopen. Okay, next slide, please. So looking now at preparing to reopen, it's a good time to sit back and look at what went well last time. Perhaps what didn't go so well. Make sure you revisit your control measures, but please bear in mind that there may be some slight changes in what those control measures might be when we come back, and that we don't lapse back into thinking that because the vaccine has been rolled out, the R rates are down, that we can't affect the R rates going back up again. We all want to stay open this time. We don't want to be put into the positions we've been in where tiers change and we keep having to open and close. That's more damaging than knowing where we are. So it really is important that you review and update your risk assessments. You look at the processes you had in place to maintain the key elements. And we will have been closed a long time, particularly for those that have been in tier 4, and reinducting staff is going to be key to helping them back in and to understanding that we can't just ignore or go back to the position that perhaps we were in late October, November, when we thought things were going well and confidence was beginning to return, and perhaps some of the controls were beginning to lapse. So I think it's essential that you consider how you reinduct staff. And that's, and again, revisit all our previous clinics and use those. They're available on the website. Ensure your remobilisation plans are up to date, your service improvement plans, etc. And see what you're planning to do for when you do consider how you're going to reopen, to try and maximise your income earning potential when you do, and you're not having to keep going around putting systems into place. And we'll discuss this in more detail at the next clinic. Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce Dan Buck, Corporate Director of Lee Valley Regional Park. So we can have a chat and a Q&A to see how they've been getting on in the regional park and their thoughts on where we are. Dan, are you there?
Hi, Ian. Thank you. Hello, okay. Everyone.
All right, good to see you. Hope you're well and all those working with you are. So, Dan, if I could just start by asking you just to explain what your responsibilities are for what is a huge variety of facilities within the Lee Valley, and give us a brief outline of what goes on in the Lee Valley and your role in normal times.
Anyone can remember normal times. Well, I've been at the park over 18 years, Park Authority, so as I'm sure a lot of people that are on this call, you know, when you're somewhere for a long time, you end up getting things lumped onto you that don't always make sense, but there you go. But my main responsibility is I cover the active communities team, which is our outdoor learning education team, our events team, all the way from the minor events to the major events like the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games we're working on currently at the moment, sports development, marketing, communications, IT, all contracts, so whether that's the grounds maintenance contract or the new leisure service contract, which we'll touch on during the presentation. Everything to do with quality, everything to do with procurement, risk management, health and safety, and venue development. So during this pandemic, we've been designing and getting planning permission for a new twin pad ice centre down in Leighton, which has been a real challenge, but we've managed to get it over the line, especially if it's on MOL. So anything to do with anything venue development wise falls under our hat as well. So we've basically split our venues into two. We've got our 6, what we call our sporting venues, which make up our leisure service contract, which is the contract that should have started last year, which is still in a hiatus. The authority is still running the venues direct after we took the venues back from the trust at the end of March last year. And they are our ice centre, our athletic centre, our riding centre, our velo park, our hockey and tennis centre, and our whitewater venue. And then our non-leisure service venues are, we've got 3 campsites, we've got 2 marinas, we've got 2 farms, and we've got a bunch of open space. So there's another corporate director, a guy called John Carney, that looks after the non-LSC, which we call them, which is basically our non-sporting venues.
So your role sounds quite simple, really. You haven't got much to focus on. So, while you just said, so presumably during the earlier part of lockdown, your outdoor events, many of those, or outdoor activities through sport development could still take place within the park, or did they all shut down as well?
We pretty much had to shut down everything. With the kind of the initial lockdown, it was such a, as everyone knows, such a hard one. You know, we stopped all activity. There was things we did carry on with volunteering as much as we could, but our open spaces, I mean, we've got 10,000 acres, you know, we're 26-mile park. You know, our ranges have been absolutely hammered throughout the pandemic. Our open spaces have been used extremely, you know, badly by people, particularly down at our London sites. You know, it's been a constant fight with raves and God knows what else going on, antisocial behaviour and everything like that. So we actually made the decision to try and keep activity, like planned activity, out of it because everything was just so busy. I mean, we had to do things even like our grounds maintenance team, we had to get them going in earlier and later because it was just impossible to do any of the work they needed to do during normal hours of the day because of how busy everything was. I think with our London venues, because everything that surrounds our parklands is flats, people haven't got a back garden. Obviously their open spaces are their back garden. So, you know, we first pandemic, we shut everything down. And at the moment, during this lockdown, we are literally doing a few volunteer tasks. You know, we have to count the goats, you know, things like that. So we're still doing activities, but very, very little organised stuff.
So what's your role specifically been during the pandemic or relevant to the pandemic?
So I'm the oversight chair for the whole pandemic. We quite, well, luckily or not luckily, because we've had issues in our open spaces with foot and mouth over the years and bird flu and everything like that, we've actually got a pandemic process in place. So back in December, when this was all starting to kick off, we actually have processes set where we start organising ourselves should a global pandemic or something like that hit the country. So we started our meetings towards the end of 2019, that obviously then started ramping up in the new year. So when things kicked off, we were a little bit ahead of the game, which I think helped us out a little bit, even though at that point we weren't in control of the venues, because at that point, all the venues, including the non-leisure service contract venues, were sitting with the Lee Valley Leisure Trust Limited, which some people might know as Vibrant Partnership. So that was my main role to start that off, and that's what I've continued to do as where we are now, basically. And we've been having, obviously, daily, twice daily, weekly meetings and everything like that during the pandemic, and keeping those things up and running.
I think it's probably a lesson to us all. It's great that you were ahead of the game, and perhaps all of us need to consider keeping the pandemic procedures up to date even when this passes. I know that some of your staff joined us on getting out the information briefs and listening to the clinics. Were we able to add anything to you?
Without a doubt, I think one of the biggest bonuses for us has been, and one of the key focus for the staff that we've had that haven't been furloughed, is getting out and listening to the experiences of others. Because we're a different organisation, we haven't got gyms and swimming pools and stuff like that. You know, we've had to see what other people are doing. We've sat on loads of park benchmarking groups, you know, the seminars that you guys have been organising and others. All that information has really helped, and we've got a process for people proactively going out, listening, and then feeding them back to the oversight group. Because for me, this has just shown in these kind of situations, you can't leave any stone unturned. You can't ever think that you've got all the answers. And I think, you know, we've been overdoing understanding what others are doing to try and keep ahead of the game as much as we can. And we've had a real culture of pushing people hard, and people not just agreeing and nodding heads and going out and finding information. So I think some of the stuff that you guys have been organising and all that lot is we've really appreciated. And I think without those kind of things, I think we would have been in a worse off position.
We understand that you've been designated as a COVID testing centre. What issues have you had to face with managing that?
It was interesting. So when things really did kick off in March, when they would the government were looking for like testing centres, stuff like that, we put ourselves very much at the forefront. So even the eye centre, for instance, we're looking at, you know, whether that works as a morgue and everything like that. So there was a lot of conversations we were having with various government departments, and in particularly the Department for Housing Communities and Local Government, who have been the people in charge of solving the testing centres. So I spent a lot of time with the guys who were organising all the bits around that. We visited a number of our sites. And then Pickett's Lock, which is where the athletic centre is situated. We've also got a cinema there, a wedding venue, and an 18-hole golf course in the campsite. We've got a very big car park there. It's just well over 1,500 car park spaces. So basically what we did was we set up a testing centre there. The original lease with the government was from April to October. That got extended to March. And then recently, we've just extended that to December to make sure that we've got everything covered. And what we've been looking at is how the operation during a semi-normal time could work with the testing centre there as well. So what we did was, when we did the deal with government, we planned it if everything was up operational on the wider site. So we knew it would probably stay a bit longer and make sure that it didn't then conflict. And we've had very little issues. Serco have done a really good job down there, managing it how we want. We have proactive meetings with them, which are things that we set, which they didn't really want to do at the beginning, but they've definitely worked. And we've had very little issues. So, you know, we keep maintaining it. I think at one point it was the busiest testing centre in the country, and I suspect it'll be there for a little time to go.
And are you likely, or do you think you might become a designated vaccine centre?
We have the ability within the lease to be a vaccine distribution centre. Parties have got to agree, and we've put extra things within the revised lease to deal with that, whether it's a press issue or people trying to stampede it to try and get the vaccines or whatever. But yeah, we have the ability to do that. Something the government were keen on, and we've put the protections in place to do that.
Obviously, a lot of focus on what's happening at the moment. Have you looked beyond that yet to see what impact on your business, but also how you're going to recover? Have you got a recovery plan developed yet? I'm sure most people will be focusing on trying to think about that at the moment. Yeah,
it's hard to have a set recovery plan when the goalposts keep getting moved, but we've been trying, particularly from a budget point of view. Half of our reserves have been hit this year. Our busy period is between April and September each year, and that's where the main amount of our income, the millions we earn, come in that time. So obviously losing that last year was a huge blow for us. So we do have a plan. We've been working our budgets for the next 2-3 years, really looking particularly at next year and what we can do. We keep adapting the plan wherever we have to, but there's a lot of hard decisions that I'm sure a lot of people on this are starting to have to make, whether it's opening hours, the type of program that's going to be available. You've got to really look at the end of the day, when we set up our COVID group, so aside from the COVID oversight group, I chair 3 other groups that report into our senior management team on the reopening of our buildings and the continual opening of our buildings. The 3 different groups are everything to do with infrastructure and systems, finance and health and safety. And what we've been doing at those groups is we've had 3 guiding principles that we started right at the beginning, that every activity we do must make a surplus. There's no activity that can take place that doesn't at least wash its face. We said it has to be COVID secure to the highest standard. So, for instance, if there was a high value activity that we couldn't make COVID secure that we were comfortable with, we just haven't done it. And the last one was that it could not affect the authority's reputation in a negative way. So every single decision we've made has been around those things, and they're all factored into our COVID recovery plan as well, that our recovery plan has to be realistic. It has to follow those guiding principles, because there's no point putting an income amount in there that is just not achievable. Yeah. And what we tried to do and what was helpful is that as we came out the last lockdown, everything we put on sale went. Our whitewater venue, everything went straight away. Vela Park did really well, hockey and tennis the same, and we continue. And what it's shown is we've got confidence because of the type of activity we do. We're not, it's one person on their bike going around a track with another 12 people. It's not, social distance is quite easy. Rafting's a little bit more of a challenge, but we've made it work in a 10-person raft with 6 people, things like that. So we know that from the last lockdown, people will come back with the activities we know we can deliver. And some of them are quite high value activities. And that's the lucky nature of our business. If we had 12 gyms in confined spaces, we would have a much bigger challenge with that. So we're just adapting our recovery plan to kind of suit from the information we've got from our previous coming out of lockdown, and then trying to factor that into what the world could look like going forward. But it's so difficult to predict.
So a lot of that is around building customer confidence when we do come back, but I understand the concerns of everybody is how to plan this, because we just don't know, do we? Are there any positives coming through?
No, and just to touch on that, Ian, for that one, is I annoyed a lot of staff because I insisted on, even if you were behind a screen, you wore a face mask, all those kind of things. And I think the COVID secure side of things is really important. We knew one customer come through that door, if your hand sanitizer was empty, if your screen wasn't in place, if staff weren't following what they should have been following, the reputation could have been absolutely hammered. Particularly, we're very conscious of the fact we have Olympic venues, and something a media wouldn't be interested in. As soon as you say it's at the Vela Park or an Olympic Park, they're all of a sudden interested. That's what we found over the years. And we knew we couldn't make a mistake. We did loads of briefings with the staff before we opened, during opening. We were out talking to the staff and all that lot. We were monitoring to make sure that COVID secure was important. So every customer that came in, we wanted them to go and tell people going, bloody hell, they're on it. That we really wanted that culture and really make sure that was in place. And that took a bit of work, particularly where we've got a lot of staff coming back from an organisation that was running our venues at arm's length. So we had to do a lot of work to get on that. And I think that's the absolute critical thing for the industry, is that if we start showing any shortcuts because of budgets or anything like that, our recovery is going to be a big issue.
Did anything else take place in those sites that you felt helped the leisure elements come back to being and encourage staff?
In what regard?
Did those organisations, how did they work? Did they continue to try and do some of their ordinary things, or was it all driven by you?
I think it was pretty much driven by us, really, to be quite honest with you, and I think rightly so, because of of our place in running the buildings and owning them.
What is there anything this time that you would do different coming out of lockdown as we approach that, or hopefully approach that?
I'm really happy with the structure we've got in place to pick up everything. It is quite intensive. We do have a lot of meetings, but they're not meetings for meeting's sake. They've all got their purpose. And that was one of the things we did at the beginning, trying to make sure we understood why we were doing each meeting and what the actual purpose and the outcome we wanted from the various meetings. So I think us doing that and being ahead of the game. So for instance, in November, we had a working group set up purely to look at if we went into another national lockdown. So we did that, we did the work. So when that announcement got made, we already had factored into, basically we've got a venue tiered system that has every single venue, every single activity, and what that means for all the various tiers. So what we did is we added in our own tier 5 back in November, the beginning part of December. So we knew if the lockdown happened, whatever the restrictions were, we could implement what we could do, what we couldn't do. We have elite athletes training at our venues, so we knew we could do some bits of that. And all it was a matter then of waiting for the guidance, knowing what we were allowed to do, and then we could implement it. We had all of our messaging ready, everything like that. So I think the continuation of that, I think, is really important. And one of the things we've said and we continue to say is this isn't a time to be safe and just agree with each other. We've been, we've really encouraged the culture at our meetings to make sure everything is challenged, and I think we want to do that even more in a more in the right respectful way, which I think our staff have done. I think looking at our key principles, make sure they're still robust and still fit for purpose. We're going to do a bit of work on that next week with a few senior officers, just looking at see if there's anything else we need to add in. Is the 3 right? Do we need to adapt the 3? Do we need to add a 4th, etc.? So we're going to start doing that. I think it's easier for us at the moment because we took the venues back just as the pandemic hit. We've been able to directly manage them and do what we've got to do. If we were going for a third party, that would obviously have been a little bit difficult, and we're still obviously looking to enter into the contract for the new leisure service contract for our 6 sporting venues. But I think during this recovery time, it's been easier for us, and we've delayed the entering of that for a little bit longer just to kind of keep managing the situation that works for both parties, really, to keep that kind of ticking along. So I think, I'm not saying we've done everything right, but I'm very comfortable with how we've structured it. And I think it's that constant ongoing monitoring and keeping the oversight to make sure that nothing creeps through the gaps and that we can achieve our recovery plan, I think, is the absolute critical thing. And that constant review. We do a weekly review of every single activity and every single venue. And we've had to make decisions on shutting an activity or shutting a venue during these times. And we've got to continue to be flexible like that, even if we've got a load of people, saying, we had a lot of paddlers at the Whitewater venue very upset that we weren't open for paddling, but we just could not do it. It didn't make financial sense. When we could, we opened it up, it sold out, and then we went on from there. It's those kind of things that I think we've just got to make sure we continue doing.
I mean, that's a great lesson for everybody. It's the review process, isn't it? See what's going well, what's not, and then build on that. Final question, Dan. And this is crystal ball gazing. What do you predict the sports and leisure industry will look like in 2 years' time?
Well, I think the main thing that comes out of this, the real positive for our industry, is I think there's a much bigger understanding of how important health and well-being is now. If you caught COVID and you were in poor health, you were in real trouble with this. And I think, speaking to people and seeing people's behaviours and just reading stuff, I think people understand that a little bit more. So I think there's a real opportunity. I think what will be difficult is, I think particularly in the next 2 years, I can't see how the stack 'em high, get loads of people in to do an activity is going to be the way forward. I think people will as the vaccine gets rolled out, people will become more comfortable with socialising a little bit more, but I think it will be in smaller groups. I think how we adapt to that will be difficult. I think some businesses will be easier than others. You know, if you think of a budget gym, I don't know if any people on here from like budget gyms and stuff like that. That looks very, you know, I'm glad that we haven't got one. You know, that would be a real challenge. You know, looking at our, you know, as I was saying with our rafting, you know, we need to get our 8 rafts of 10 people down that course every single hour to make the money we need to make. How do we square that now? Do we do smaller rafts, get more down there? You know, all those kind of things. It's very, very tricky. So I think, you know, there will be some instances of that. I think how you use your open spaces and your outdoor areas is really important. We're lucky with most of our venues, we've got some parkland around it. How we can do more outdoor stuff during the summer, everything like that. Utilise different spaces within the buildings. You know, I know a lot of people here will be moving their gyms and their dance studios into sports halls and everything like that, and then what that means for other activity. You know, you might not be able to do badminton anymore because that's where you need your fitness classes. Those kind of tough decisions really that need to be made. You know, that's going to be really, really hard for the industry. And I think the fleet of footness, you know, and I think, you know, working with local authorities and everything like that, you know, how we take advantage of the opportunities that come up are going to be really important. And everyone's just got to understand is everything's going to look different to what we went in. And we've got to be really open minded to say we're not just going to open our buildings with the same activities, with the same numbers, the same opening hours, with the same staffing levels. Staffing levels will be lower. We've got all the things of remote working now and how we utilise that and help that with our overheads, but also from a staffing resource point of view. But our activities in our venues need to be looked at. And unfortunately, there's going to be some tough decisions taken. You know, so as I said, you know, something like badminton might not be something that we can do loads of going forward because we just haven't got the space to do it. People got to focus on the high value activities that can be actually delivered. And it's going to be a really tricky time for it. And there's going to be a lot of activity that's going to be displaced.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I mean, I do think, coming from what you said, though, that the opportunities are there if we get it right and we focus on the income generating activities to keep ourselves solvent and to keep even the budget gyms looking at how they're going to be able to manage going forward. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And please, for anybody on the call, if you've got questions for Dan, he'll stay on till the end. Please put them on the chat so that at least gives Dan a few minutes to prepare his answers. Thank you, Dan. Very, very brilliant to have you on board. So thank you. Okay, go over to Caroline, I think.
Thank you so much, Dan. I did ask him to give us the heads up about his quest assessments, but I think he forgot, so I'll wrap his knuckles later.
I tried prompting him and he didn't get the prompt.
I did forget that, and I'm sorry. And I should say that the Vela Park getting excellent during this lockdown has been amazing. And if we did not implement a long time ago, Caroline, we won't say 20 years, just say a couple of years or something like that. But if we didn't have that quality framework in place, I don't know where our venues would have been. I'd be frightening. Everyone works to that quality principle, and we've brainwashed everyone. So, you know, your guys' help has always been brilliant. And apologies for not mentioning it. I should have done.
I was only joking. Okay. Just a few updates from things obviously that's going on with Right Directions at the moment, just to keep you in the loop. As I'm sure all of you follow us on social media, or hopefully do, you'll see that we're still getting the ongoing information briefs out. As soon as anything changes or there's an update, we're keeping those going. So you will find those on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. So keep an eye out for those. Obviously, as soon as anything changes, we'll be the first to let you know. I'm trying to move so that I'm being injected in the arm rather than in the head. Probably do need an injection in the head, but so virtual support days. If anybody wants us to pop in to centres, we can, or online, or come into centres, we can. Obviously, with work, we can still work outdoors. So if you do want us to come to sites, we can come and have a look around, look at your processes, look at your risk assessments. Let us know if you want any support like that. We've also got risk assessments templates are all on Stitch. They are being updated as things change. So please keep an eye on the changes of those. We're changing them in line with what we've been saying in the briefs or in the clinics. So keep an eye on those. What we're also doing for anybody who works with Right Directions, who is a client of ours, we're putting on some understanding statutory requirement webinars for staff, because obviously staff can do training while they're on furlough. So for any management staff upwards, so duty managers, ops managers, etc., we're going to be putting on some understanding of COSH, manual handling, some of those basics, refreshers, to keep everybody sort of thinking, brains working, not becoming PlayStationized, TVized people. So for those of you who do work with us, please let us know if you would like to join those, and you can do through the website, I do believe. We're also offering for our clients, because obviously lots of people are now locked down, we're offering some free on-demand training for those to support the industry whilst everybody's shut down. So again, get in touch with us if you're interested in any of those training. Also, we just finished working with Staff Miss. They're putting on a statutory compliance facility matrix where people can log all of their statutory stuff. So whilst you are in lockdown, this is an extremely good time to be updating all of your statutory, what you've got, your folders, your pieces of paper, making sure your ducks are in a row so that we can open back up ready and admin sorted, rather than just coming back to chaos. So it is a good opportunity to do those behind the scenes housekeeping things. All your folders that are full of rubbish, there's no reason why those things can't be done while people are stuck. They're not service generating, business generating, they're just housekeeping, tidying things. So we will be updating. There's been very little changes to legislation. There's been a couple of little bits, but we will be advising of you guys of those changes in the next month or so. But nothing absolutely massive that will affect you. So for any people who have our QMSs and are wondering why we haven't given any updates, the reason being is because we've obviously all been focusing on COVID and making sure that we keep our heads above water with that. So there are a few little changes, but nothing massive, and we will be in touch with you on those changes. Jill, can you next slide, please? In terms of quests, obviously, for those of you who had assessments booked in November and December and January, just so you know, we will be moving those into a flexible time to suit everybody. There won't be any strict timelines, so you'll be able to go again in April, May, June, depending on when we open and when you want them. Obviously, if you're picking Quest Prime, that is to make sure, the check is much more about being COVID ready and your procedures and control measures are in place. So for those of you who want to demonstrate to members, to leisure members, local authorities or customers, you more than be delighted if you want to get through your Quest assessment. Potentially even ask your local authority if they'll support the scheme. And when you do pass your Quest, you now get a lovely little window sticker that says that we're actively ready to go on your front doors. So please get in touch with us if you're interested in rebooking in Quest assessments or going for Quest for the first time. Jill, next slide, please. So also, obviously, we have been telling you over the last few months that we've now got some online training for staff. As you can see, there's the list of courses. We've kept the prices very, very cheap for everybody. So they're online, they're competency based. They will be CPD points accredited, and you will have online tests, and managers will be able to see what people have done on course. So please get in touch if you're interested in doing any of those courses while the staff are furloughed. They can do the training without you needing to bring them back to work. So Jill, next slide, please. Our next clinic is on the 16th of February. We're going to be focusing a lot. We're going to be focusing on working from home. We know you've got an awful lot of staff working from home, and the stats around injuries of people sat with bad position and posture and laptops and not looking after their physical health at home. So we're going to be homing in a little bit on that next time, along with another guest speaker, but we won't tell you who that is just yet. We're not going just yet because we're going over to questions. So I think next slide is questions, isn't it, Jill? Yes. We're going over to questions. So if anybody's got any questions for us or for Dan, I'm going to pass you over to Jill.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Dan. We haven't got many questions in the chat, so if you have got anything, please put it in. But we'll start with Dan, and a question on the ice rink. When is the ice rink starting to be built? Is the current venue still going to be used throughout that time? And when should it be due to be open, the new venue?
So there's a procurement open at the moment for someone to build it. We'll know who that company will be in around April time. We're hoping to start late summer on site. The plan is a phased build, so the venue stays operational while we build the first pad, and then we move into the new first pad, knock down the old pad and build the rest of the facility. So the plan is to be fully operational in 2023, ready for that 2023-24 winter seasons. So that's currently where we are with the ice centre. And there was just one thing, sorry Jill, on something that Caroline said about external support. And I just wanted to add that it's been one of the best things for us to help us with COVID across like the entire pandemic. So we've had external support for health and safety, HR, employment law, everything like that. And even we've got support from different local authorities that are specialised in certain areas. And I think that's a really important thing for everyone to try and look at. We basically looked at where what our staff knowledge and everything like that would be a little bit weaker. And we looked at where we could get that additional support. And that's been absolutely critical in our recovery so far and will continue to be so. So I think obviously some of the services that you guys offer as well, I think can really help everyone. And I think you have to be honest about what you can deliver, what you can't deliver, and where you need that external support, but have a very clear plan as what you need from that support. So I just wanted to add that from something that Caroline said. Thank you, Dan.
A bit of a cheeky question here, but this is what's been put in the chat. Would you be able to share a summary version of your COVID recovery plan, Dan?
Not at the moment, because it's all part two. Part two for us, by the way, is non-publicised members' papers and everything like that. What I'm more than happy to do, if there's any people that want to follow up in the coming months and everything like that, Jill, if they ask questions of you or want some information, I'm happy to pass bits and bobs on if it supports. I think one of the key things is how we help each other come out of this hideous time. So I'm more than happy as we go forward to share anything that anyone wants to know. It's no problem at all. But our finances and stuff like that, until they're a part one public paper, I'm not allowed to share anything. But
okay, thanks for that, Dan. And I think, yes, we've talked quite a lot throughout the clinics about how networking has been important throughout this period. Ian, I think I'm going to push this question into you from Duncan, and maybe we can get some other people involved who were on the clinic. So Duncan from South Downs has had to go, but has asked a question on he would be interested to know how trusts are planning to cope with the loss of January sales. There is talk that April may become January, but how many sales of memberships will have been lost in that time? Ian, do you want to add anything to that? Or
I kept the camera off, hoping you wouldn't pick on me.
Sorry.
I mean, I think it is a challenge, clearly. One has got to hope that the New Year's resolutions will carry on, and whether we need, I'm not a marketeer, but to somehow make it the Easter resolutions, there will be a number of people that realise, as Dan said, that health is key to this, and lots of people who are perhaps unhealthier and their lifestyles don't suit to it are still going to be at risk, because the core of the population isn't going to be vaccinated until September, as they've said. So it's how we use those opportunities, and I know there are a number of other seminars looking at commercial selling and those points, but I think I think it's one of the key things in building their recovery plans, how they're going to use it within the confines of the spaces that they're going to have available. And I think I've said this repeatedly. I think the organisations that have got their digital platforms working alongside their in-house, so that for the likes of aerobics classes, which I see as potentially the more problematic areas, will be able to keep their membership numbers up by offering a mix of in-house and external to keep the numbers down within the building until we genuinely crack the ongoing spread of the virus. But it is the challenge for all of us, I think.
Caroline, do you want to add anything to that?
I ditto what Ian said. I think the most important thing between now and reopening is comms, is making sure that you're keeping in contact with your members in whichever way you can. I think it's going to be really hard in April, especially if we have nice weather, where people will have kind of got used to exercising at home and outdoors, that they carry on doing that. So I think the message has got to be about the social element and the seeing people and the interaction in preparation for another winter. So getting people back into centres through the social element rather than the physical fitness element. And obviously we do need to work on the message that your inner health is as important as your outer health. And you might think you're fit and well, but if you're not exercising and not working out, then you potentially are at risk of catching the virus another time. Ian, are you handing up?
Yeah, the long-term weather forecast, by the way, is that this summer is not going to be as good as last. So maybe there will be some opportunities to drive people back indoors.
Well, that's what we need. We need snow in June, preferably. We need the beast from the east in June.
Okay, thank you, guys. There doesn't appear to be any more questions on the chat. Just one thing which is on the chat, and Caroline has responded around where the presentation, but the question has been asked again. And thank you, Sarah, for putting the link into our YouTube channel. So for those who do want to see a copy of the presentation, you can actually get the presentation on our website, on our COVID-19 page, along with all of our other clinic presentations. We will be uploading the video for today's presentation onto our YouTube channel. That's normally towards the end of the week, but again, if you want to have a look at any of our previous clinics, then all of the recordings are on our YouTube channel. Okay, I think, Caroline, back
Yeah,
to
just all I wanted to say was thanks to Jan. You don't see Jan, but Jan puts together all the clinics beforehand, and Ian and Jill and all the Right Directions team who have an input into what we're saying and what we're doing. And a big thank you to Dan. Juggling homeschooling, I know I'm very lucky to have an A-level person at home, so it's an awful lot easier, but extremely hard for all of you out there that are juggling, trying to do bits and pieces, flexi, furlough, working and everything else. It's not easy at all. So thanks, Dan, for giving up your time. I know you're very, very busy with everything you do, so really appreciate that.
No problem. Thanks for having us. And yeah, it's brilliant what you do with all this, so please keep it going.
And David says hi, Dan.
Good. I hope he's making you a cup of tea, Caroline, and not, you know, using his time wisely.
Yes.
Okay. Caroline, do you want to close the clinic then?
Yeah, thank you ever so much for listening, everybody. Hang in there. We'll get through this. We're a very strong industry. We're a positive bunch of people. Make sure you're talking to people, looking out for everybody around you. Make sure that your people who are potentially working at home on their own are kept in contact with or are isolating. So please let's look out for each other, and we'll come through this stronger than ever before. So thank you ever so much. We look forward to seeing you on the clinic, and get in touch with us if you want anything, you want any support.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Thanks, Dan. Cheers, Jill, Ian. Thanks.
Stay well. All the best.
Thanks, Ian. Really appreciate everything, Jill, Ian.
Thank you.